Alright, sorry about that. I got rudely interrupted by the video cutting off. So this is going to be the last part of this video, I promise you. This week, y'all have stuck in there and watched a lot of videos, but it's really important information that's going to help us get off the ground here. So I just want to kind of talk more about the clone stamp spot healing brush and a really important thing to do when we're using these tools. So once again, we talked about the history tab in module 1. And remember that it records up to 35 to 55, somewhere in there, actions. Now with the clone stamp and spot healing brush, the problem is every time you click with one of these tools, every time you use one of these tools, it's going to be one action. So they fill up really quick. I'm just kind of clicking around and you see how fast every time I click the cursor, it's an action. So that's 35 to 55 actions fill up really quick. And as you fill them up, what happens is the history tab starts erasing or making the top history disappear, right? It deletes that, so you can't go any further back than the magic wand tool at this point. If I do another spot healing brush, it's going to start filling those up, right? So it's really easy with these tools to really fill up your history and get to a place where you might have made kind of a mess and you can't go back. So a really important thing to do whenever you're using these tools that I highly recommend is to always make a copy of the background layer and work on the copy of the background layer. So let me just grab my background. There's two different ways of doing it. You can click the background and bring it down to this little dog-eared icon right there, and we see that we end up with a background copy, right? That's one way to do it. I'm going to click and drag this to the garbage can and throw it away and show you the other way. The other way is hit Control, click on the background, and just hit Duplicate Layer. And you can call it something here. You can call it clone stamp. So then you know that all of your clone stamp edits are done on this layer and not the actual background. If you wanted to just if you wanted to duplicate it this way and change the name, you just double click on the words background copy and hit and type in clone stamp like that. So once again, really important to do that on a copy of the background, and I'll demonstrate why. So let's just go and let's clone my dog into this photo a couple times. So I'm going to use the clone stamp right here. And remember, you can make your brush bigger with the right bracket, smaller with the left bracket. I'm going to try to do this, relatively well. So I'm going to use a pretty small brush. And I'm just going to slowly paint it in. Because when I was doing the demos before with these tools, I was just kind of rushing through it and not really showing you, how you would do this in a refined way. So now I'm just doing it slowly. And I'm just, I'm paying attention to the bullseye on the original picture of my dog and seeing what parts we're painting in and making sure I'm not painting over the border too much. Now there's some areas that I am, and I also don't want her to look like a ghost, so I want to paint her in fully. So that looks pretty good to me. We see that, right there in, the front of her face and maybe her back a little bit, I've painted over, which isn't a big deal. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to Command plus and just zoom in. And let's say I wanted to clean up this selection. Then I'm going to make my brush a little smaller. And I'm going to select part of the tent. And I'm going to paint over this information with the tent information so that it kind of cleans up that edge. Oop. Let's click again. And just paint it in like that. And the best way to do this is to click a bunch of spots. So not just click one spot and keep going. I think that's a good technique if you were trying to paint, let's say, my dog in, but it's not the best if you're trying to clean up the border like we are right here. So that looks pretty believable to me. Especially if we zoom out, we're going to see that that looks pretty believable. Now, let's say that we wanted to do it one more time and we just go over here and we, make my brush a little bigger. I'm going to do it kind of sloppy over here. And say, oh, you know what, we overdid it. This doesn't look so good. We thought it looked good, and we actually don't like it. Well, we are slowly filling up, just in this little edit right here, we're slowly filling up the clone stamp. So if you're doing a bigger clone stamp job, it might already be filled up, and we can't access any edit before the clone stamp in the history tab to go back to. So if we got to this place, essentially what we'd have to do if we were doing this on the background is just start on the file over. Where if we do it on a copy of the background and we say, oh, we actually don't like it, we can just turn the copy off, or we could just throw it away and we're back to square one. So that's a really important thing about those tools. Always use them on a copy of the background. That's the clone stamp right here and the spot healing brush. Okay? All right. So let's just kind of skip through. These are not tools that we're going to be using a ton right now. Is the painting tools. We will be painting using the brush tool, but we won't be kind of doing like, you know, the sharpening, the dodging. We will be using the pen tool a little bit, but we're not going to dive into that right now. The text tool we will be using, right? So you just select the text tool, click on your image, and you can start typing. Obviously, like every other tool, you have, right, you can change the size of the text, you can change the style of text, the font, all of it. You can do that right here. So that's that, right? We could highlight it right there, and we could change the color of the text. We can grab the move tool, we can move the text around. You get the point. That's the text tool. Then we're going to be using the hand tool. We already know that one. It's the shortcut of it is the space bar. So if you're zoomed in super close, you grab the hand tool or you hold the space bar down, you can click and drag through your image. If we go to the navigator here, it's also this red square right there. We can click and drag through the image like that. We also are going to be using the magnifying glass, which we have covered. So those are the tools that we are going to be using very frequently in this class. You should be a total and absolute expert on tools at this point. Now, don't get me wrong. If you don't feel like, right, I threw a lot of information at you this week with the tools. If you don't 100% get them, don't worry. We are going, right, the style that I'm kind of rolling this class out as dump the information on you, and then we're going to kind of sift through it and perfect your knowledge of it. So I want you to be familiar with all of those tools, but you don't have to be an expert at those tools right now. Don't worry, we'll have time to perfect it. All right, thanks for hanging in there.